Okay, so this obviously is a discussion around Black Lives Matter. This is a discussion between staff members at Loughborough College. This is a discussion to try and talk about people's experiences. So from myself, from being a white privileged male, this is going to be quite a tough kind of listen. And I think it's important. I'm here just to listen, to understand, try and understand, and try and educate myself as well. So that's my reason for being here. But I want to put it open to people who are here to talk about their experiences and talk about what this movement means to them. So, like I say, from a college point of view, we need to do better as a college. We need to educate our learners more. And I want our learners who are watching this now to really kind of see people that are real to them, to people who've taught them, people who've had the conversation with them, to see that this isn't just a kind of movement that's happening in America. This is happening in the UK, where there is still, racism in the UK, and there's still racism in Loughborough College, and still racism in Loughborough College Sport Department. And we have to identify that, we have to learn from it, and we have to kind of move forward. So it's kind of open to people here to talk about their experiences.
Do you want me to go for it? Yeah. I'll talk about my Black person experiences as a teenager. So when I was 12 years old, I started doing a paper round in like a relatively nice area. And I remember that, I got pulled over by the police. So they drove next to me. And that's where I got my bike from, because I was delivering papers to a white area. And like stuff like that, like I was taught as a kid just to, but my parents told me to kind of accept that that's going to happen. I've got to work harder than a white person to get to a certain level in life. And I feel like that's kind of carried through with me throughout my entire life. I've always had to try and work harder than a white counterpart to get to a certain point in life. So yeah, those sorts of things that happened as a kid shaped and changed how I kind of perceive life. I don't know if Christy and Alex can relate to anything similar to that, like about working harder or.
Yeah, my mum's white, let's be clear. But she still sat us down and told us exactly the same thing. And I excelled at school, as did my sisters, because my mum said we had to work harder, we had to get better results. Just a few examples, because obviously I'm a lot older than all of you. So I've kind of seen it from when it was really, really bad. And then actually things did get better in my lifetime. And for it to be how it is now, for me, is really upsetting, because I feel like it's slid right back. We had dog shit posted through our door on a regular basis. I remember my mum pushing the pram with my daughter and my sister, and she was spat on in her pram, that kind of thing. And that was a regular thing, being called a monkey at school every day, people making noises at me. And be clear, I'm very light skinned. So, the experiences of my friends who are very dark are much more horrendous. The same for my elder daughter, who, a lot of she's 24, so we're not talking many moons ago, who would sit in her class at the school I taught at, by the way, and kids that I taught would be behind her calling her nigger all through the lesson. So, this is not us just going, oh God, this happens to us. It's real and present, and it's a real undercurrent, because people know they shouldn't do it. So you've got the people who know they shouldn't and do it, and then others that say things but genuinely don't understand the impact that they're having.
Alex, do you want to talk about anything from yourself?
I've never really spoke about my experiences, to be honest. I think only like close family members have known about my experiences. So obviously, growing up in a predominantly white area in Tamworth, my mum knew exactly the struggles that I would go through in my area. She knew that, and she wasn't afraid to tell me. Obviously being a teenager, about 15, 16, I quite big, braided hair, looking like a prime David Hay, lovely, lovely looking young lad. I stood out in a crowd, especially around my friends. So I've had incidents where, I've never really gone as far as, taking people to court or nothing like that. But I've had incidents where I've had, an off-duty police officer outside a store call me a nigger. Weirdest experience I've ever had, because I saw him actually in his uniform, which shocked me, 2 weeks after, and I refused to speak to him. I had to speak to his colleagues because I said, it's not on what he did. I've had incidents where my brother-in-law has actually been over here. He's actually a colour sergeant in the army, black male from St. Lucia, and being in this area, like I said, predominantly white area, we went out once before just to go fill up some petrol, and I think it was dark in the car. We turned on the light in the car just to quickly grab something from the floor, turned it off, and 2 police officers saw that as an opportunity to basically pull us over. What you would have thought would have took 2 minutes, just to, don't turn on your lights, just be careful where you go in and so on. What 2-minute job actually turned into a 30-minute search and question. So we were pulled out of the car. The car was searched from top to bottom. We were asked questions. We were asked to take clothes off, so they could search us there and then. They asked us, silly questions such as, we had a toolbox in the boot, because he's very DIY hands-on, and they were pulling out tools, asking us, what do you use this tool for? It's pretty self-explanatory. It's a tool and it's in a toolbox. It's pretty common sense, so something like that, it's quite horrible to go through, but being educated early on from my mum, she did tell me, these are things that you're gonna face, growing up. You're always gonna stand out in a crowd. You're always gonna be the first person that people pick out because you stand out to the rest of the crowd. So I've learned to live with it, and I've managed it well. I've never really, took it further, pursued it or anything. I've just learned to live with it and just roll with punches, pretty much.
Which is wrong. It's so wrong. This is the problem. We've all learned to live with it, and we're tired of it.
Yeah.
And every time, I'm so tired of it. And every time something like this happens, no disrespect, because I'm so thankful for this platform, but we get this rush of everybody wanting to support us. And then in 3 weeks, it's all died down and no one cares anymore. Yeah. Even throughout my career, I mean, I've been very lucky. I made head, you've all know that I've been a secondary head, but the only reason that happened to me is because I was in a behavioural. If I'd have gone through mainstream, I probably never would have made that position. Even in schools, we are overlooked. We are only 3% in managerial positions in school, but yet most of us are significantly more educated in terms of our qualifications. That's a fact that you can check, but we're just not promoted. And when we speak out, we're labelled loud, because that's a characteristic of black people, isn't it? We're all loud. And we're trouble causers if we try and raise things, whereas if you raised it, you're not a trouble causer and it's taken seriously. Whereas I feel like I'm always trying to be talked down about my experience, about what someone said to me, about what I think isn't right, and then in the end you actually stop reporting it yourself, because it's like, what's the point? And I don't know how you two feel, but that's how I feel.
I feel like it's difficult to see change happening, because we're conditioned, and this is how we lived for the past 26 years. So it's difficult to see anything kind of changing. Like, I've been taught to kind of, this sounds really bad, but to act more white in certain spaces to get better position. Yeah. Like, I've been taught to act white and to talk white, and that'll help me get further. And I honestly believe that if I didn't do that, I wouldn't be where I am now. But if I wasn't taught to use certain words or talk in a certain tone, then I wouldn't be as far as I am now. So I feel like it's difficult to see any sort of change happening. Like Chris said, this stuff happens all the time, and then it's like a rush, and it's like, oh my god, let's help them, and then it just disappears, and then it's back to square one, and people just that's my main point on that.
I think go on, Chris.
One of the reasons that I have tattoos, and obviously I have one on my hands and mine are quite visible, is because everybody looks at me wrong anyway, so what's the point? I just think it doesn't make any difference anyway, so I may as well do what I want. And that is genuinely the reason why I have this, because what else can I do anyway that's going to make me look any more wrong than people already look at me? Yeah.
I think from a sports department point of view, we have to be better. We have to educate people, and that basically means that, you know, we will be educating people about Black history, and like we've spoken about before, that won't be just coming from a white male or white female at the class. That is actually getting people in the classroom that understand this, you know, any more than we can ever understand it, and talk about it from that. So when we're talking about the Bristol, you know, bus boycott, when we talk about the Notting Hill riots, when we talk about these things, to make sure that people understand Black history and understand the impact of it and why people are rioting, because that's one of the criticisms in a minute, why they're rioting, why they're looting, etc. Because the issue is that that's how riots happen, that's how change happens. That's when you look at any kind of movements throughout history, this is the whole point, is making noise to make sure people understand what it is. You know, I'm like I say, I'm a white privileged male. I've never had to explain what my name means, what it really means, or where I really come from, or anything like that. You know, I've never had to have that side of it, and you know, and that's something that I have to understand. I have to try and learn from it. I have to educate it. I mean, me talking to obviously to white people watching this as well, is that I think from when I spoke to Chrissy last night and we spoke about this, is that we're going to get things wrong and we're going to make mistakes, and it's kind of okay to make mistakes, not you know, not to be overtly racist, but it's okay to make a mistake and kind of put your hands up and acknowledge it. And I think if you acknowledge it and you say, right, listen, I've messed up there, I didn't, you know, I've not understood the impact, is to educate yourself to understand why that's not okay, why that word's not okay, why just joking about it is not okay, because it begins that culture of, but I'm just messing. You know, I've got Black best mate, I've got this, I've got that, I'm not racist, and that's my key word for it.
I hate that.
Yeah,
I've got Black friends, I'm not racist.
Yeah, and I hate that. And our department needs to be not a racist department, it needs to be an anti-racist department, and there's a huge difference in that. Not racist is a bare minimum of being a human. Anti-racist is calling things out. Anti-racist is making sure that we promote, you know, Black history, we promote this side of it as well. And it's not just a month in October, which we do anyway, but, you know, it's about making sure this is current throughout the whole of our education, ensuring that when we're looking in lessons, that we are looking at lots of different examples and we're talking about that and we're not hiding from it. And also, we need to make a culture in the sports world where we call things out, and it's okay for you know, for kind of what they call white allies and things like that as well, to say that's not okay, and kind of, you know, have clarity on that and make sure that's happened. Because I know in the sports department, I've worked there for 12 years, there's been cases where someone may have said something or someone may have, you know, joked about something, and I've not called it out. I've kind of just gone through and thought it's probably more hassle than it is. I don't understand the topic about it. Also, as a white male, I can't call it out, and there's that sense of it as well. So I think we need to get better, and that's something that definitely needs to happen. And I think that's where we need, you know, yourselves to educate us and talk about this.
I think there's an important point to make as well, in terms of, if you don't like Black people, and I mean, obviously this involves other minorities, but if you don't like Black people, that is absolutely perfectly okay, and that is your prerogative. What is not okay is to come and say that to myself or anybody else. If at home you want to have those discussions and that is how you feel, that is perfectly fine. That is fine. What you can't do is come out and act on that and use that, particularly as a teacher, when you're in a position of power, because it is a position of power, because you can influence people's futures because you hold particular prejudices, and that is not okay. You are very powerful as a teacher, the same as police are powerful. You can affect someone's day, someone's life. Every time something happens to a Black student and you pass it over, the amount of things my daughter used to come home and say to me as a straight A-star student, who, by the way, used to get wheeled out at every ceremony because she was so good at everything. And now that she is, I hate saying this, now she's famous and she's written all these books, and the school are asking her to come in, she said, absolutely hell no. And this is why my daughter writes only Black characters in her books, because she wants to promote positive Black images. You know, my daughter's not full Black, if we want to get technical, but I've had to raise my girls like they're Malcolm X. That's what I've had to do, so that they have confidence around that. And to have to do that as a parent, you know, you're not even thinking about that. You're like, oh, let me take my kid to the park. Let me do this, let me do that. You're not sitting your kids down, making them watch Roots, which is what, you know, I had to do. And we're having to actively do this, and it is honestly exhausting. It really is.
I think the fact, as Black people, we have to do our own research in our history. So as a kid, like, you get a brief bit, I think is in year 5, about slavery, but that's it. And then you've got to, You've got to do your own active research on that. So like my mum will sit me down and watch Roots and things like that to see how racism actually is portrayed in America and how it's portrayed in Britain, because you won't know that otherwise. If we didn't do that ourselves, we wouldn't know otherwise as well. So I think that it's the education is the most important thing. Like it needs to be from a younger level and stripped down to the basics and just let people know that we're being discriminated just literally based on the colour of our skin. There's nothing else to it, just because of the colour of our skin. So yeah, that's.
No, you make a good point. Let's be honest, we can all probably name Henry VIII's wives. We can all name, all that side of it. But no one talk about African queens or African kings and that side of it as well. This issue is what I'm trying to say, that we're learning certain bits and what is very very nice and kind of conformed in that side of it as well. And like you say, if I'm talking to people, is that they've had to do their own research on their own history, which is absolutely nuts, and it is.
It's crazy. It's absolutely crazy.
I think as well, moving forward though, I think there are some areas where maybe we can be better moving forward. I think young people of colour, whether black, Asian, whatever, I don't like to hear the term used, is it because I'm black? Is it because of this? I don't like that to be used so lightly, in such a sensitive issue and with such history behind it. I think moving forward, especially students of today, if things aren't going your way, whether it's you haven't got the grades that you've got or whatever it is, I don't want those sort of, gestures made. I don't want that, because it's such a light, sensitive subject, and I think moving forward, people need to understand that as well. I think, unless you've got something to really justify what it is you're saying, you can't use those terms lightly, and I think people need to understand that as well moving forward. Definitely.
Yeah, sure. And also, that students need to feel like they're treated equally. I see a lot of people not treated equally. They don't know they haven't been treated equally. For instance, the amount of time or effort that's put into a student that's not white, or the fact that they're slipped a bit more time, whereas I've seen the same exact scenario with a black student, and I've seen it more than once, and zero, zilch, no, they're not having that. And the language that's used around that student, which sometimes might be warranted in terms of their behaviour, and I get that, but actually a lot of times is very blatantly, the words might not be said, but I sit there and listen to it, and I know it's very blatantly because they're not white. The maneuverability, the support's just not there, and sometimes I just sit there and shake my head and just think, shall I say something? And then I just feel it's a physical exhaustion at times where I just think, shall I do this? If I do this, that means that member of staff is going to be funny with me for the next 2 weeks, and then I'm going to have to sit here and be ignored, and it's that, and I go through that whole process in my mind, and then I think, you know what, I'm not going to do this because this is just a job, and I come here to get paid, and that is genuinely my process around those things. Because otherwise you get alienated for daring to speak up.
Yeah.
Am I right?
Just to follow up on that as well, I've seen, I'm not going to name names, but I've seen members of staff mock the way, so a lot of our students use slang, and that's just how they're brought up. I've seen members of staff mock students for using their slang, and although that's not the correct way to talk. So if you want to talk like that, among your friends, that's fine, but I feel like they're kind of penalised for not talking white or correctly, and I thought I've seen that happen, and is in a position where you're a minority, you feel it's difficult to kind of speak up against that, because you feel that, like Chris said, that you're just going to be alienated, or that it's going to be uncomfortable for them. You just kind of ignore it, and that's just how the cycle continues to happen.
I think that's where we've got to get better as a department, and this is, like I say, this is something that we have to look at, and we have to make sure that it's a comfortable department where people can talk out and can say things. And I think as white male, like I say, I need to understand that sometimes if someone says something and I've done something wrong, I need to put my hands up. I don't need to. I think the biggest thing from a white person's point of view is that you feel kind of like if you're caught out, or you're said, you said something wrong there, you've got to really kind of defend yourself that you're not racist. That word, not racist. It's not about not racist. It's about being anti-racist. It's about kind of going, do you know what? Absolutely, you're right there. I've messed up there. I need to do better, and I need to improve on that. going forward. Like I say, I think it's not to be so scared to kind of get things wrong. I think that's from a point of view on the other side is the kind of like, well, if I say that, or do I say this, or do it? And I think actually just having the conversation, this is the first time we've done this in 12 years, having these frank conversations, kind of saying, okay, so what terms, everything about it, what do we say? When do we say that? How do we combat that? How do we go and talk to that student? Do you know what I mean? And actually having them conversations with you guys to help us understand and to help us educate ourselves and to help us learn. And it's a key thing from our point of view.
And also, you're dealing, all of us are older, okay, so we're kind of used to our experience. Our students are much, much younger and coming through at a time where racism is really bad. I think this is the worst I've ever seen it in my 47 years. They know the way that you are being towards them. They are so sensitive to it. So when you say a certain thing to a student or you behave in a certain way to a student, they know why you're being like that, or they may be hypersensitive to that behavior because of what they're experiencing all the time. And that's something that perhaps staff need to also understand, that when you're going to that person, they've already decided that you've decided what they are, and that causes a problem in itself. So I feel like if the students are aware that we are doing this, if they understand that we're trying to make this effort, this isn't about you having to check yourself for everything that you say. I would never want my friends, my colleagues to sit there thinking, God, I don't know what to say. Am I allowed to say that? Am I allowed to say that? No, that's really not what it's about. It's more like, my best friend is the whitest person in life. She's bright ginger. And this week she came to me and she said, I don't know what to say. What's the right thing to say? I don't know what to say. I don't want to say the wrong thing to you. And I'm like, you just speak how you would normally speak. It's more in those situations where you're not sure that you feel comfortable coming to us and going, what shall I say? I don't know what to say. Like, I don't know how to go to this student. Yeah. It's not about us going to them. You need to do that for yourself. But it's what's the right way to do it. Or it's what I was going to say okay anyway. Sometimes people are just naughty and it doesn't matter what colour they are, they're just naughty. Yeah. But it's just kind of saying, is this a situation that might become a bit sticky? Do I need to just check myself here,
No. Yeah, good. That's good.
Is there anything else that people want to discuss and talk about? Like I said, it's 25 minutes already, which is fantastic, and it's a great platform, like I say. But if there's anything else that you guys feel that needs to be there and chat, from a college point of view, like I say, on our social media channels, we are going to stop promoting Black history, and that it doesn't have to be sport. This is just people need to understand things, need to learn, educate themselves, like I say. And in our tutorial system, we're going to embed this Black history throughout. It doesn't just come about when it's Black History Month. This comes about when we're talking about different things. And that's lots of different histories as well, to make sure people understand that just because you're studying a sport course doesn't mean you can't learn about other things. Mm-hmm. And I think we should be learning about other things and other ways we do side of it. So that's from what point we're going to try and make. And like I say, I think we really need help. We need to understand things, and we need to learn and educate things. And I think we'll be looking for you guys to call it out, and hopefully we can create a culture, we can create a department, and that's students and staff, where we can call things out and we say that's not okay, and this is how we go about it, and this is how we learn from it, and we educate ourselves from it and try and understand as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is a great start for me. Just having this conversation has made me feel so much better. I know I spoke to you last night, Danny, and I was really upset because obviously, the majority of my friends are Black and they have gone through a lot worse than I have. One of my friends' son was killed in police custody in Nottingham about 15 years ago. So these things for us are very real and very present. And they do happen here. They're just not publicised in the same way because we have a much smaller amount of minorities in this country than America does, So thank you really for doing this. It's been a good experience for me. This has never happened to me before with anywhere that I've worked, and particularly in teaching, never. 20 years I've been teaching, nearly never before. So thank you to yourself and also to the college.
No, but I think also thank you for you guys, because like I say, I think when I said to you, kind of like, we hear you, we need to understand that, and thank you for teaching us, and that's the whole point. We need to to understand, and we need to learn. That's the whole point. Like you say, education is the main thing. That's what we work in. We love education. Education is the way to transform lives. Education is the first starting block to making people better people. And I think, like I say, and I was reading some from Greg James, actually, the Radio 1%, and he said that you should never stop learning. And that's a cliche, but why he's saying that, so many young people kind of go to school, go to college, and that's it, we're done. This is me as a person. Well, actually, no, you should learn about these things. You should basically learn more than you can try and learn from things. And every day you should be able to pick things up and kind of go, right, that's not okay, or right, I need to improve on that. And like I say, everybody in this chat is here because we need to improve, we need to understand, and we need to learn. So, like I say, thank you for taking the time out to educate us on that as well.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers, guys. I really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.